My neighbor hasn't bought a bag of fertilizer in 11 years. His garden still outgrows every yard on the street. Ask him where it started, and the trail leads to the last place you'd expect. Nobody has fertilized this black Amazon dirt in 500 years, and it still outgrows the jungle standing around it. Everywhere else in that same forest, the story flips completely. Clear a patch of Amazon forest, plant it, and in 2 or 3 harvests, the soil is finished. It is some of the poorest ground on the planet. But scattered through that same forest are patches of deep black earth that never wear out. Nothing about the surrounding forest explains them, and for centuries, every outsider who studied them reached the same wrong conclusion. The evidence was sitting inside the dirt the whole time, and nobody thought to look at what it was made of. In August 1542, a Spanish expedition reached the mouth of the Amazon River. Among them was a Dominican friar named Gaspar de Carvajal, who kept a record of what he saw. He described villages running for miles without a break, roads cut inland, fields, crowds thick enough that his party did not dare go ashore. Back in Europe, nobody believed him. Carvajal was written off as a man exaggerating to make his suffering sound grand. That verdict held for centuries. What nobody accounted for was what arrived after him. Within roughly a century of first contact, smallpox and other old world diseases swept the riverbanks. Estimates put the pre-contact population at several million people in settled, organized communities. Most of them were gone inside a few generations. The survivors scattered inland. The forest closed over the top. But it did not take everything back. Along the rivers, the ground stayed black, not brown, black and soft and deep. The Portuguese who came later called it terra preta de Indio, dark earth of the Indians. Dig into it and you find things that do not belong in soil. Broken pottery, stone tools, fish bones and animal bones, charcoal worked through the whole layer. That is kitchen waste. That is the floor of somebody's home. 500 years without a single handful of fertilizer, and it still grows. In 1966, a Dutch soil scientist named Wim Sombroek published the first serious study of it. The book was called Amazon Soils. He wrote it from fieldwork along the Rio Tapajos in Brazil. Everyone around him treated the black earth as a geological accident. Sombroek looked at the pottery and said something almost nobody would say out loud. People made this, on purpose, over generations. Sombroek was a boy in the Dutch famine, winter of 1944. His family survived off one small plot. Their ancestors had fed that plot with manure and sod for generations. The neighbors went hungry. Sombroek had eaten from soil like this before. He just had not known what to call it. Knowing who made it did not explain why it still works. That took another 35 years. Terra preta is not just darker than the soil beside it. It carries far more organic carbon, phosphorus, and calcium than the ground a few steps away. In 2001, a German soil scientist named Bruno Glaser published a paper in the journal Naturwissenschaften, the terra preta phenomenon. His finding was blunt. The active ingredient is the charcoal, not ash. Charcoal. It is made by pyrolysis. Heat wood with almost no oxygen, and it chars instead of burning. Charcoal made this way has a name: biochar. What survives is a skeleton of carbon riddled with holes. A single gram holds 200 to 400 square meters of surface. Spread one black crumb flat, and it would cover the floors of an entire house. Water sits in those holes. Nutrients stick to the walls, microbes move in, and they stay for good. Johannes Lehmann at Cornell University has spent years on the same chemistry. Pooled results from hundreds of field trials put the average long-term yield gain at around 16%. The poorer the soil going in, the bigger the jump. A 2010 study in Nature Communications ran the numbers globally. The same carbon that feeds your soil for decades doesn't just sit there, it stays out of the atmosphere too. Glaser could explain the chemistry. He couldn't explain the silence around it. The silence has a name, and she worked at the Smithsonian for 58 years. For most of the 20th century, the leading voice in Amazonian archaeology, backed by one of the most respected research institutions in the country, was Betty Meggers. In 1971, she published a book whose title tells you the whole argument: Amazonia, Man and Culture in a Counterfeit Paradise. Her case was that the soil was too poor to feed a large population. So no big society could ever have existed there. The forest looked lush, but it was a trap. That became standard teaching for a generation of students. She was not corrupt, she was wrong, and she was powerful. And those two things together are enough. In the 1980s, the archaeologist Anna Roosevelt went back to Marajo Island and dug. What she found, published in 1991, pointed to exactly the society Meggers said was impossible. The two of them fought it out in print for years. Then, in 1992, the geographer William Denevan published an essay called The Pristine Myth. The empty wilderness Europeans described was not nature at all. It was a graveyard, refilled with trees. Carvajal had been right the whole time. That settled the history. These blackened patches, sitting in some of the poorest soil on the planet, are man-made. But settling the history never explained why the technique itself still hasn't made it out of academic journals and into ordinary gardens. Then there is the money. The global synthetic fertilizer trade runs somewhere around $200 to $230 billion a year. A short list of companies holds most of it. Nutrien, Yara, Mosaic, CF Industries, ICL. That business works because fertilizer washes out. It must be bought again every season. Charcoal does not wash out. Put it in once and it sits there. Biochar cannot be patented. It can be made from waste wood by one person in an afternoon. Beside the fertilizer trade, the biochar market is a rounding error. Nobody is hiding this from you. It is worse than that. Nobody has any reason to tell you. That no company profits from this soil is the strongest argument for it. You cannot make true terra preta. That took generations living in one place. But you can make the ingredient that does the work. The same thing my neighbor burns in a pit every autumn. One weekend with yard waste. Start with dry, untreated wood. Dig a cone-shaped pit, wider at the top, and light a small fire at the bottom. As each layer turns to glowing char, add another thin layer of wood. Just enough to keep flames burning across the surface. The fire on top consumes the oxygen, so the wood underneath chars instead of turning to ash. That is pyrolysis, right in your backyard. When the surface is lightly coated with gray-white ash, but the charcoal underneath is still black, drown it, not a sprinkle. Flood it until every piece is cold. Now comes the part almost everyone gets wrong. Fresh biochar is empty. Mixed into soil straight away, it can temporarily tie up nutrients instead of helping your plants. Crush it first, then soak it for a few days in compost tea, manure slurry, fish emulsion, liquid kelp, or simply mix it into finished compost. Finally, mix it into the soil. A handful in each planting hole, or about 5 to 10% of the soil volume, is enough. And unlike compost, you usually only need to add it once. The people who invented this were not experts. They were just households throwing out dinner. There is a pile of branches behind your shed. That is the whole entry fee. Most rediscovered techniques stop there. A footnote in a journal, a museum case. This one did not stay in the past. In 2023, a study in Science Advances found Cuicuro villagers in Brazil's Upper Xingu region still making dark earth today. They call it agape, and soil analysis says it closely matches the ancient ground next door. 7 Cuicuro co-authors are listed on that paper, which leaves the obvious question, what else is still going on in plain sight that nobody has thought to ask?